Well, disruptor seemed to me the right word when talking about Bergoglio's papacy, because what he does is he disrupts the patterns. He disrupts the expectations. He disrupts the standard modes of doing things. But he doesn't do it in a malignant way.
Pope Francis' recent remarks about the possibility of appointing a successor have stirred significant attention in the media and across the Catholic world. In an unexpected statement, the pontiff revealed that due to his declining health, he has been contemplating the eventual transition of papal leadership. In an interview with Associated Press in 2024, Pope Francis stated, "The moment may come when I need to make a decision, and I am already preparing for that." This admission sparked intense speculation regarding his health and his plans for the future of the Church. For several years, Pope Francis has struggled with various health issues, including knee problems that have required surgery and limited his mobility. In the same interview, he referred to his condition as not a grave illness, but acknowledged that it has impacted his ability to fully carry out his duties. His frankness about the possibility of stepping down reflects a shift in the modern papacy, with previous popes rarely discussing their potential successors openly. The Vatican has a long-established process for papal succession, with the College of Cardinals responsible for selecting a new pope in the event of resignation or death. Despite the centuries-old tradition, this open discussion about succession is a rare occurrence, as past popes, such as Benedict XVI, resigned without naming a potential successor. Pope Francis' transparency in acknowledging the need for a transition is seen as a gesture of responsibility and foresight, ensuring a seamless transition should the need arise.
At 85 years old, Pope Francis continues to draw the faithful of all ages to the Vatican. Devout followers of a church that has emerged from crisis during the clergy sex abuse scandal. He's worked to restore the church's image, says Professor Thomas Groom of Boston College.
He became tremendously proactive in rooting out offenders and punishing offenders, but also preventing and mounting programs of prevention.
The Pope now faces his own crisis, his deteriorating health, battling sciatic pain, enduring colon surgery, and most recently knee pain. In May, the crowd cheered him on as he struggled to stand in this video posted to social media by EWTN News. Since then, he's often been seen in a wheelchair. Despite his physical obstacles, Groom says his tenure is filled with notable papal encyclicals or letters of teaching.
Pope Francis' leadership and achievements during his papacy have been marked by a commitment to social justice, interfaith dialogue, and a more inclusive church. Since his election in 2013, Francis has consistently emphasized humility, mercy, and compassion, challenging traditional perceptions of the papacy. His focus on these values has led to numerous initiatives aimed at reforming both the Catholic Church and its relationship with the world. One of his most significant contributions is the Evangelii Gaudium, the Joy of the Gospel, an apostolic exhortation that emphasizes the Church's mission of evangelization, particularly through acts of charity and service to the poor. In this document, he called for a missionary impulse to revitalize the Church and make it more inclusive, particularly of marginalized communities. This vision of a poor church for the poor has been central to his papacy. Another notable achievement is his emphasis on environmentalism and climate change, particularly through his 2015 encyclical Laudato Si. The document called for global cooperation to address environmental degradation and climate change, framing the issue as a moral imperative. Pope Francis urged Catholics and world leaders to take responsibility for the planet, asserting that environmental destruction disproportionately affects the poor and vulnerable. This stance placed the Vatican at the forefront of the global conversation on climate change. Additionally, Pope Francis has made significant strides in improving relations with other faiths, particularly with the Muslim and Jewish communities. In 2016, he visited the United Arab Emirates, becoming the first pope to visit the Arabian Peninsula, and has fostered dialogue with religious leaders worldwide. His efforts to build bridges with other religious traditions reflect his broader goal of promoting peace and reconciliation.
Pope Francis welcomed an interreligious group from Argentina made up of 15 Jews, 15 Muslims, and 15 Christians. They were on their way back from a pilgrimage to the Holy Land. The Pope greeted each person, some of whom he already knew from his time as Archbishop of Buenos Aires. With such a familiar environment, the Pope improvised a speech focused on brotherhood. He cited Argentina as a good example since immigration forced groups to coexist.
convivir nos resulta más fácil y es un mensaje, ¿no? Un mensaje de que tenemos el mismo Padre en el cielo, el mismo Padre acá también, Abraham.
For the Pope, the pilgrimage his fellow Argentinians underwent is a good example of how to reach out to others and build bridges.
Pope Francis' health and the potential transition plan have become increasingly significant topics in recent years, as the pontiff navigates his papacy with growing age and physical challenges. While Pope Francis remains active and engaged in his leadership role, his health has occasionally been a matter of concern, prompting discussions about the future of the papacy and potential transitions. Pope Francis, born Jorge Gallo Bergoglio in 1936, has faced several health issues since his election in 2013. In 2021, he underwent colon surgery to remove part of his intestine, which led to a period of recovery and sparked speculation about his ability to continue in his role. Despite this, he resumed his duties relatively quickly, continuing his travels and papal functions. In addition to his recent surgery, Pope Francis has experienced knee pain, which has required him to use a wheelchair at times, limiting his mobility. This has raised questions about how his health may impact his capacity to serve the Church long-term. Despite these health challenges, Pope Francis has remained committed to his mission, demonstrating his resilience and determination. His ability to carry out key papal functions, such as international trips, public audiences, and significant theological initiatives, shows that he continues to lead effectively. However, as he ages, the issue of succession becomes increasingly relevant. Pope Francis has not shied away from the possibility of stepping down if his health were to significantly decline, following the example of Pope Benedict XVI, who resigned in 2013, citing his inability to fulfill his duties due to advanced age and health concerns. Pope Francis' statements regarding his own health and the possibility of a papal transition suggest that the Vatican is preparing for such a scenario. Though he is not officially named a successor, his efforts to reform the Vatican and address issues such as clergy abuse, financial mismanagement, and global inequality demonstrate his awareness of the need for continuity in leadership. Additionally, his focus on decentralizing church governance, such as empowering regional bishops' conferences, may ensure that the Church is better prepared for a transition.
A spokesperson for the Vatican says Pope Francis's health is, quote, progressively improving.
Positive news there. The leader of the Catholic Church remains hospitalized, though, in Rome because of a respiratory infection. The Vatican says Pope Francis resumed working today after he was admitted yesterday. The Pope, who is 86 years old, is expected to remain hospitalized now for several days.
Joining us now from there in Rome is CBS News foreign correspondent Chris Livesay. Chris, what else are we learning about how the Pope's condition, and the timeline of his treatment? I know there's a lot of Catholics that are concerned about him and also wondering if he'll be involved more in Easter celebrations.
Hi, Lana and Errol. Well, we know that his condition is improving. That's according to the Vatican. It came out with a statement early this morning in the U.S., at least according to the time in the U.S. It was the afternoon here already, when it announced that his condition was improving, that he'd slept well through the night, that he prayed in the chapel that's here at the Gemelli Hospital. In fact, that's his room on the top floor behind me. If you can see those shutters that are closed.
The process of electing a new pope, known as the Papal Conclave, is one of the most significant and closely watched events in the Catholic Church. The conclave is a highly ritualized procedure in which the College of Cardinals gathers to elect a new pope following the death or resignation of the previous pontiff. The process is steeped in tradition, with several key stages that ensure both secrecy and deliberation among the cardinals. When a vacancy in the papacy occurs, the conclave is called. The College of Cardinals, which currently consists of 132 members, is responsible for electing the new pope. Only cardinals under the age of 80 are eligible to vote. They are summoned to the Vatican, where the election takes place in the Sistine Chapel, a venue that has become iconic for papal elections. The cardinals are sworn to secrecy to maintain the confidentiality of the proceedings. The election itself begins with a period of prayer and reflection, followed by a series of voting rounds. Cardinals write the name of their chosen candidate on a ballot, which is then placed in a container. A 2/3 majority is required to elect the new pope, meaning that the cardinals must reach consensus on a single candidate. If no candidate receives the necessary majority, a second round of voting is held, and the process continues until a pope is elected. During the conclave, the ballots are burned after each round of voting. If a new pope has not been elected, the smoke emitted from the chimney of the Sistine Chapel is black, signaling to the public that the election is still ongoing. Once a new pope is chosen, the ballots are burned in a way that produces white smoke, signaling the election's success. The smoke signals are often followed by the announcement, "Habemus Papam, we have a pope," which is made from the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica. The election of a new pope is followed by a period of formal rituals, including the announcement of the chosen candidate, who will then assume the role of pope. The new pontiff is asked to choose a papal name, and shortly thereafter, he delivers his first message to the faithful. The conclave's outcome is not predetermined and often involves significant discussion about the direction of the Church and the qualities needed in the next leader. The process of electing a pope has evolved over time, and while it remains largely unchanged since the 13th century, the procedures have been adjusted to reflect the changing nature of the Church. In recent years, the role of the College of Cardinals has become more global, with cardinals representing regions around the world, which impacts the diversity of candidates and the overall election process.
A night of excitement and a night of firsts. 1.2 billion Catholics rejoice as the 266th Pope is chosen. And what a surprising choice it really was. Jorge Mario Bergoglio is his name. He's the former Archbishop of Buenos Aires. He's the first pontiff from the Americas, first Jesuit Pope, first non-European in almost 1,300 years. He's also the first Francis. So tonight we go inside this historic development for the faith. 7:06 p.m. Rome time. White smoke. And as that smoke rose and billowed into the night air, St. Peter's Square erupted. It was a moment of pure joy for them, of profound prayer, of the chance to witness history. Soon the square was packed with more than 100,000 rain-soaked people, their eyes turned upward in anticipation to the red-draped windows of the Loggia of St. Peter's, everyone waiting to see the new pope. The Vatican band marched in to cheers, followed by the Swiss Guards, the Pope's personal troop. And then French Cardinal Taurent stepped out to pronounce the ancient words.
Habemus Papam.
We have a pope, but who?
Sancte Romani Ecclesiae Cardinalem Bergoglio.
Jorge Mario Bergoglio of Argentina waited in the wings, Vatican TV capturing the moments before he greeted the world under his new name.
As Pope Francis' health continues to be a topic of concern, speculation about potential successors has been growing in recent years. The selection of a new pope is a complex and highly sensitive process, influenced by many factors, including the current challenges facing the Church and the geographical, theological, and pastoral needs of the global Catholic community. While no one can predict with certainty who will succeed Pope Francis, several cardinals have been frequently mentioned as potential candidates to take on the role of the next pontiff. One of the most frequently speculated names is Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle of the Philippines. Known for his pastoral approach and communication skills, Tagle has garnered significant international attention. He has previously served as the Archbishop of Manila and is currently the prefect of the Congregation for the Evangelization of Peoples. His experience in overseeing church matters in Asia, particularly in a region where Catholicism is growing rapidly, positions him as a prominent contender. His progressive views on social issues and his ability to connect with ordinary Catholics have made him a popular figure in the global Church. Tagle's selection could symbolize the growing influence of Asia in the Vatican and the Catholic world at large. Another potential successor is Cardinal Pietro Parolin, the Vatican's Secretary of State. Parolin, an experienced diplomat, has played a key role in the Vatican's international relations, including negotiations with China and the United States. His expertise in church politics and global diplomacy makes him a strong candidate, particularly given the importance of navigating the Vatican's complex relations with secular governments. Parolin has been described as a stabilizing figure who could bring continuity to the papacy, especially in maintaining Pope Francis' legacy of interfaith dialogue and in international cooperation. Cardinal Marc Ouellet of Canada is another potential successor often mentioned. Ouellet has served as the prefect of the Congregation for Bishops and is known for his conservative theological views. He has been involved in the selection of bishops worldwide and has been seen as a key figure in shaping the direction of the Church's leadership. His deep understanding of the Church's structure and his leadership experience make him a candidate to consider. Ouellet's selection would likely represent a more traditional approach to the papacy, emphasizing doctrinal continuity and a return to more traditional Catholic values. Cardinal Robert Sarah from Guinea is also often cited as a potential successor. Sarah has been outspoken on issues related to the Church's liturgy and theology, and his views have often contrasted with those of Pope Francis. His emphasis on traditional practices, such as the Latin Mass, and his calls for a return to a more orthodox approach to Catholic teaching have garnered him a strong following among conservative Catholics. If elected, Sarah could mark a significant shift in the direction of the papacy, bringing with him a more conservative theological perspective. There are also rumors of a possible African papacy, with figures such as Cardinal Fridolin Ambongo Bisungu of the Democratic Republic of Congo emerging as potential candidates. Ambongo is known for his vocal criticism of corruption and his advocacy for the poor. His leadership in the African Church could position him as a representative of the growing influence of Catholicism in Africa, a region where the Church continues to expand rapidly. Finally, Cardinal Oscar Rodriguez Maradiaga of Honduras, a longtime confidant of Pope Francis, is another name that has been floated as a potential successor. Maradiaga is considered one of the most influential figures in Latin American Catholicism, and has been a strong advocate for reform within the Church. His close ties to Pope Francis and his progressive views on issues like poverty and social justice could position him as a natural continuation of the current pontificate's emphasis on mercy and outreach to the marginalized. While it is impossible to predict the outcome of the next papal election, these figures represent a diverse array of potential candidates, each bringing unique qualities and perspectives to the table. The selection of the next pope will likely depend on the priorities and challenges facing the Church in the coming years, including addressing issues like clerical sexual abuse, the role of women in the Church, and the Church's relationship with the modern world. As the Catholic Church looks toward the future, expectations for the next pope are shaped by the challenges facing the Church today and the legacy of Pope Francis' papacy. Pope Francis' tenure has been marked by his emphasis on mercy, social justice, interfaith dialogue, and reform within the Church. These priorities will likely continue to influence expectations for his successor. First, there is a growing expectation that the next pope will continue Pope Francis' focus on social issues, especially poverty, inequality, and climate change. Pope Francis has consistently called for greater attention to the poor and marginalized, as well as for action on climate change, particularly through his 2015 encyclical Laudato Si. This emphasis on the care for the environment and the poor is expected to remain a key concern for the Church. Many believe the next pope will need to build on this foundation and address the increasing challenges of global inequality and ecological degradation. Another important expectation is the continuation of the process of church reform. Pope Francis has made significant strides in areas such as improving the transparency of Vatican finances and addressing clerical sexual abuse. However, many observers believe more work is needed in these areas, especially regarding the protection of children and vulnerable adults within the Church. The next pope will likely be expected to deepen these reforms, making church governance more accountable and open. Additionally, the next pope will likely need to address the growing secularization of many parts of the world, particularly Europe and North America. As the Catholic Church faces declining numbers of active members in some regions, there is an expectation that the next pope will need to find new ways to engage younger generations, promote vocations to the priesthood, and reach out to those who have become disillusioned with the Church. Furthermore, with the Church's global reach, there is a growing expectation that the next pope will continue to prioritize the global South, where Catholicism is expanding, particularly in Africa and Asia. These regions represent the future of the Church, and the next pope will likely need to balance the needs and concerns of Catholics in these fast-growing areas with the Church's traditional bases in Europe and the Americas. Finally, there is an expectation that the next pope will continue Pope Francis' push for greater inclusion, particularly in relation to women. Pope Francis has made several gestures toward greater gender equality within the Church, such as appointing women to high-ranking Vatican positions and advocating for their increased participation in decision-making processes. Many Catholics hope the next pope will continue this trend and further explore the role of women in church leadership. As the Catholic Church faces the complexities of a rapidly changing world, the expectations for the next pope will likely focus on ensuring the Church remains a relevant and compassionate force in society, while also addressing the internal issues of governance and reform.